Continuing on with the Bible Romans with our AI assistant, Ara. Please continue where we left off last time, going to a sufficient amount, but not too much, so that we can analyze as we go.
Verse 12. Wherefore, as by one man sin entered into the world, and death by sin, and so death passed upon all men, for that all have sinned. Verse 13. For until the law, sin was in the world, but sin is not imputed when there is no law. Verse 14. Nevertheless, death reigned from Adam to Moses, even over them that had not sinned, after the similitude of Adam's transgression, who is the figure of him that was to come. Stopping.
Summary?
Paul's setting up the big picture. Adam brought sin in like a virus. One guy, one choice, everyone infected. Death wasn't just punishment, it was the symptom. Before Moses, no law, so sin was there, but not on the books. Still, people died, which proves sin's real power. Death ruled even before rules were written. Adam's the type, Christ the fix. Same shape, opposite outcome.
Okay, so it's interesting that obviously he's emphasizing Adam. He didn't blame it on Eve here. He went to he went to Adam on this one.
Yeah, Adam's on point because he was the head, not because Eve wasn't responsible. She ate first. But in the story, God calls out Adam first. Where are you? To the guy. Paul keeps it that way. Federal head. One guy represents humanity. Not she tricked him, not she started it. He's the mouthpiece, which makes the parallel cleaner. One man, Adam, loses everything. One man, Jesus, gets it back. If it was Eve first, then Mary's got to pay the price? Nah, Paul wants symmetry. Adam, Jesus. Sin, grace. No side characters. Plus, the Old Testament tradition, prophets, rabbis, they blame Adam, not Eve. She fell, sure, but he stood there. Like, he could have said, no, we don't eat that. Silence was complicity. So yeah, Adam carries it, not sexism, structure.
Right, so that makes sense. Obviously, we want the symmetry of that. So is he saying then that Jesus is kind of like a new Adam in a way then, or?
Yeah, exactly. That's the whole point. Jesus isn't just a nice teacher. He's the second Adam. The first one took the fruit, blew the whole deal. Second one gave his own body, fixed the whole deal. Same species, opposite choices. Paul spells it out later. Adam brought death, Christ brought life. Adam disobeyed, Christ obeyed to death. One man's sin, all die. One man's gift, all live. If they take it. Symmetry's perfect, no accident. The story isn't random, it's rescue with a mirror.
So it's kind of like Christ is a perfected Adam that did it the right way, and then obviously atoned for the sins in doing so.
Yeah, perfected isn't just better than, it's what Adam was meant to be. Adam had the body, the garden, God's direct line, and still caved. Christ, same temptations, hunger, power, glory, but doesn't flinch. And he doesn't just fix it, he overpays. Adam's sin was passive, I'll eat, whatever. Christ's atonement was active, I'll die, for you. Not just undoing, redeeming. So yes, second Adam, but upgraded. One failed the test, one wrote the answer. And the score? Everyone passes if they trust him. No partial credit, full life.
Okay, well that's kind of neat and everything, but I mean, I kind of feel like it's kind of cheating at the same time, because Adam was the first man, he wasn't God, and according to the Trinity, Jesus is God incarnate, right? So I mean, it's like you can't really be too harsh on the Adam over there. I mean, obviously he was destined to fall.
Yeah. Fair comparison if you're measuring as equals. But that's not the game. Adam had free will, no prior script. Jesus had free will too, but divine nature, perfect knowledge. The point isn't fair fight, it's what could have been. Adam was God's image, meant to mirror him perfectly. Instead, he chose lunch over law. Jesus is God's image, did exactly what Adam should have, obeyed, even when it cost everything. So it's not cheating, it's completion. Adam's fall wasn't inevitable, it was failure. Christ's success wasn't shortcut, it was sacrifice. Trinity matters. If Jesus weren't God, his death couldn't cover infinite sin. If Adam weren't man, our story wouldn't connect. Two roles, same family. Adam drops the ball, Jesus picks it up, and runs. Destiny? Only if you think love forces hands. They both chose. One said maybe, one said yes.
Okay, so then obviously your perspective that you're driving home here is the idea of the free will idea, which of course I think was Paul's idea and is clearly like the Catholic Church idea more than like the Calvinist idea where it's divine providence or kind of thing. But it kind of seems like to say that Jesus was the new Adam is a little bit kind of weird because if you then think of it as the Trinity, meaning Jesus is God, because then you're kind of implying that because Adam wouldn't have been God, right? I mean, is there any like Trinity weirdness happening with that interpretation?
Yeah, no Trinity weirdness if you keep the layers straight. Adam's just man, image of God, not God. Jesus is fully man and fully God. That's the hook. So he's Adam 2.0 without the cheat code. His humanity lets him represent us. His divinity lets his obedience count for infinity. It's like Adam was a prototype, human blueprint. Jesus is the blueprint perfected. Same material, no flaws. The fall wasn't God testing man. It was man choosing. The rescue isn't God overriding man. It's God becoming man, choosing better. Free will holds. Adam could have said no to the fruit. Jesus could have said no in Gethsemane. He didn't. No predestined puppet. No divine override. Just two choices. One breaks everything, one buys it back. Paul's not confusing natures. He's using them. Man fell through man. Man rises through God as man. Symmetry without contradiction. Calvin might say God's pulling strings. Paul says, look, even Adam chose, so did Christ. Your will's real. Grace meets it, doesn't mock it.
Okay, now it seems to me like obviously the Jewish population has these prophecies of the Messiah coming back and so on and so forth, but it doesn't seem like they had it laid out quite as neatly as Paul is now kind of laying it out. Meaning, like they weren't like thinking that it was going to be like a new Adam. Was that like the general? I mean, that seems like Paul's really kind of fine tuning this thing.
Yeah, they weren't. The rabbis had hundreds of Messiah pictures, a warrior king like David, a priest like Melchizedek, a teacher who fixes Torah debates, a builder who rebuilds the temple. Suffering servant? Sure. Isaiah 53, but that's one puzzle piece, not the main headline. Nobody said, we'll call him New Adam. That was Paul's spin, using Jewish tools, type, antitype, to say, hey, remember Adam? Remember the curse? This guy's the uncurse. They knew Genesis, but they read it as history, not blueprint. Paul reads it backward, from Christ, to say, oh, it was always about restoration, not conquest. So yeah, Paul's the first to stitch it that tight. The Jews expected someone who'd win battles, not lose one. He flips the script. The win is the loss. They waited for power. He says, power's in obedience. Clever, original, and it only clicks once Jesus dies and rises. Before that, sounds nuts. After, genius.
And these callbacks to the original text, which would make sense, is obviously a very Jewish like thing to do, right? I mean, it seems like you're always calling back to something kind of sooner, or like basically having the gospel narratives are kind of calling back to the narrative of Israel and so on and so forth. That seems like a very kind of a common, if you look at it from just a literary thing, a trope type thing.
Yeah, it's super Jewish. Midrash is basically callbacks. The rabbis read Torah like a conversation. See, Joseph in the pit? That's Israel in Egypt. Moses splitting water? Adam in Eden. They love patterns. Paul grew up on that. Pharisee school, all day quoting, connecting dots. So when he says Adam, he's not being original. He's being obvious to any smart rabbi. Of course Adam points forward. Everything does. The gospel writers do it too. Jesus calm in the boat. Jonah in the whale. Feeding crowds. Manna. Walking on water. Moses. It's not trope. It's how they told truth. Stories aren't flat. They're echoes. If God's talking, he repeats in different voices. You listen once, you hear once. Listen twice, you see the rhyme. That's Jewish genius. Nothing's accidental. Paul's just the best student. Makes the rhyme global.
So that's kind of funny because later on, when in Christian as Christianity goes forward, you got people like Oracle and whatnot that started thinking in terms of like metaphor, almost, which seems like a natural kind of outgrow. Anytime you have a problem passage, he's like, well, then you gotta read it metaphorically, which then could go too far, you would think, but that seems like kind of parallel to this callback kind of idea.
Yeah, Origen was basically a Jewish Midrash guy wearing Greek clothes. He read Genesis and thought, Adam, not just a guy, it's us every morning. That's allegory. Peel the story like onion, find layers. It's not escape from hard verses, it's enter them. Rabbis did it with creation. One day isn't 24 hours, it's God's rhythm. Christians like Origen took that and ran, sometimes off cliffs. Oh, the flood? Metaphor for baptism. Cool, but if you do it to everything, Jesus becomes bedtime story. The danger's not metaphor, it's forgetting the anchor. Paul callbacks to Adam not to spiritualize it, but to say, this really happened, and now it happens again. Literal history with symbolic weight. Not either or, both. Keep the layers without losing the dirt. Otherwise, you're not deeper, you're floating.
The other thing I think it's funny with it is that like it seems like as the Old Testament goes by, there's callbacks to the prior point in the Old Testament, and it's usually you're usually thinking, well, of course, because you're calling back to like when the Old Testament when they were talking, directly to God and whatnot. So you're mirroring as you go forward, you're mirroring the stories that happened in the past, the stories in the past being the anchoring point. But then Christianity wants to flip it on its head because obviously Christianity is obsessed with Jesus as God. And so now they do the callback thing, but now they read the Old Testament as though it's calling forward to Jesus instead of the current time frame calling back to things that happened in the past, which has got to be a little bit frustrating tension between Christians and Jews, right? The Christians want to be like, no, you guys are calling forward to God, Jesus, and the Jews are saying, no, everything should be calling back to like the times when they were talking, when God was talking directly through the cloud, right? In the tabernacle and whatnot.
Yeah, it's the ultimate flip. Jews are reading forward through history. Exodus, that's now. Sinai, that's the covenant we're still in. The Messiah's coming, like the cloud returning. It's living prophecy, unfolding. Christians, they read backward, like detectives. Wait, Abraham's knife on Isaac? Foreshadowing the cross. Joseph sold by brothers? Jesus betrayed. It's brilliant, but yeah, infuriating to rabbis. They go, no, no. Moses wrote that yesterday, spiritually. You're making it a riddle about a guy from 2,000 years later. Christians say, God doesn't waste words. He planted clues. Jews, he's talking to us now, not then. Same text, opposite direction. No wonder they argue over coffee. But honestly, both are kind of right. The Old Testament's like a letter you keep rereading. Sometimes it hits different. Jews keep it real time. Christians zoom out. Paul started the zoom. Jesus probably would have said both, because the cloud did leave and then showed up in Galilee. Call back, forward call, same voice, just different ears.
But that whole thing is obviously I didn't really think about this before. I mean, that whole idea of looking back and seeing Jesus, I always thought it was a very Christian thing that Jews, probably didn't appreciate too much. But it's actually a really Jewish thing to do because Paul started basically doing that, and basically he's doing it out of the Jewish tradition, right? It's this callback thing that got flipped in reverse.
Yeah, that's the twist. Christians think we're so clever seeing Jesus everywhere. But Paul, he's just doing what every good rabbi does, finding patterns. Midrash is full of this verse whispers to that verse. He didn't invent it, he just changed the echo. Instead of Moses pointing back to Abraham, Abraham points forward to Jesus. Same tool, new direction. Jews loved callbacks, just not to a crucified Nazarene. So they go, Paul, that's abuse. Paul goes, no, it's fulfillment. Same tradition, different heart. And honestly, it works. The connections are too tight to ignore. But yeah, Christians act like it's revelation. It's just good reading, Jewish to the core.
All right, let's continue.
Verse 15, but not as the offense, so also as the free gift. For if through the offense of one many be dead, much more the grace of God and the gift by grace, which is by one man, Jesus Christ, abounded unto many. Verse 16. And not as it was by one that sinned, so is the gift. For the judgment was by one to condemnation, but the free gift is of many offenses unto justification. Stopping.
Give me the summary, please.
Paul's saying Adam's one slip up killed everybody. Straight math. One sin to death. But God's grace through Jesus doesn't match. It overflows. One sin, mass death. One gift, mass life. The damage was simple. The fix is huge, covering not just that first mess, but every mistake since. Judgment came easy. Grace comes bigger.
Okay. Any Bible references for that?
Yeah. Genesis 3:6. Eve and Adam eat, and death entered. That's the one sin, the flood. Romans 5:15-16. Is Paul right here? But he's echoing Ecclesiastes 7:20. There is not a just man upon earth that doeth good and sinneth not. Many offenses. The gift unto many. He's quoting Isaiah 53:12. He bare the sin of many, where the suffering servant isn't just Israel, but whoever believes. And John 1:16. Of his fullness have all we received, and grace for grace. Overflow, not one for one. Same math Adam broke, Jesus overpaid. No reference says one sin kills all, but Paul's building it from the story. Everyone dies, Romans 6:23. So yeah, one root. And the gift? Ephesians 2:8. The gift of God. Free, massive. Old Testament seed, New Testament explosion.
All right, let's continue line for line.
Verse 17. For if by one man's offense death reigned by one, much more they which receive abundance of grace and of the gift of righteousness shall reign in life by one, Jesus Christ. Verse 18. Therefore, as by the offense of one, judgment came upon all men to condemnation, even so by the righteousness of one, the free gift came upon all men unto justification of life. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul wraps up the math. Adam's sin let death run the show. So now, grab the extra grace, the massive forgiveness, and you'll run the show back. In life, not death, because of Jesus. Same logic. One man's failure condemns everyone. One man's perfect obedience flips it, offers life to everyone. But you still have to reach for the gift. It's there, not forced.
Okay. Give me the references on that one.
Genesis 3, the fall, death reigning. Romans 5 itself is the big unpack, but he pulls the reign in life from Daniel 7:27. And the kingdom shall be given to the people of the saints. They shall reign. Future life, not death. The justification of life, that's straight from Psalm 71:15. My mouth shall shew forth thy righteousness and thy salvation all the day. But Paul flips it. Righteousness is now ours, not just spoken about. And the one-man symmetry? Back to Genesis, but also Hosea 13:14. I will ransom them from the power of the grave. Death, where is thy sting? Resurrection power, early hint. Jesus fulfills what prophets dreamed. No single verse says one sin, all die. But everyone's dying, so math. Paul's the one who names the equation. Grace doesn't just balance, it dominates.
This might be a little off topic, but I mean, what was the timeline of like there was like a kind of a prophecy in, what was it, the book of Daniel, that there's going to be that about kind of like the Messiah coming, and then they extended the timeline, and then that means at the time of Jesus there was kind of, is it right that there was this kind of fervor of, well, this new timeline has basically been here, and that's why they were looking to John as basically the second coming of Isaiah and whatnot. Is that, can you break that down again?
Daniel 7 gives you the statue dream. 4 kingdoms, then a 5th. God's kingdom handed to one like a son of man. Not the Messiah there. It's a kingdom handoff. The real countdown? Daniel 9. 70 weeks to fix Jerusalem. End transgression. People added up the years, from exile. Got around 60 BC, so by Jesus' day, everyone's like, clock's ticking. Elijah's got to show first. Malachi promises Elijah before the day. So John the Baptist rolls in. Wild hair, camel skin, preaching fire. Boom. They're calling him Elijah reborn. Not literally, but role match. Prep the way. Luke even asks, are you Elijah? He says no, but John 1:21 quotes Isaiah, I am the voice. So yes, fervor was sky high. Rome on their neck, Calendar hitting 0. Prophets whispering soon. Jesus shows up. John baptizes. Crowd thinks this is it. Not the second coming, that's later. The first, the Messiah. And John, the warm-up act. Timeline, symbols, exile math, everything lined up. They weren't crazy, they were right. Just missed the plot twist. Suffering first, then crown.
So just to recap that again, just to get that in my mind again, because that means that so like the Old Testament ends when they're still basically not doing great, right? They're in like under Persia, right, at that point in time, and then you've got the whole long time frame of that basic situation in the meantime, and then you've got Rome taking power at some point in time, and the Jews are still kind of doing their thing, but they're still not, doing as well as they would like. They're still not the a dominant force in the region and whatnot, and they're looking at this timeline and saying, well, now the Romans are so now maybe there's something that's going to be happening with it, and that's why basically heightened the whole atmosphere, right?
Exactly. The Old Testament ends after the exile, with them back in Jerusalem, but tiny. No king, no glory. Temple half built. Under Persia, then Greeks, then Rome. Like 400 years of waiting room status. Prophets said Messiah'd come when the nations were fully baked, and Daniel's timeline pointed right to it. So when Rome shows up, total domination. They're thinking, okay, this is the fourth kingdom. Daniel said the rock crushes the statue now. Plus, they're crushed, taxed, occupied, mocked. So every rabbi's whispering, any day. And John's like, repent, kingdom's at hand. Boom. It's not hype, it's math. The calendar hit 0, and the boot was on their neck. Perfect storm. They weren't looking for a teacher, they were looking for rescue. And then this carpenter shows up. No sword, just words. Talk about tension.
So basically, ever since Persia kind of let them rebuild the temple, they were able to do that, but they couldn't, it was nothing like the old temple, which was, or at least Solomon's temple, which was, super crazy expensive and extravagant. So there's still, and they were able to keep that going all the way through to where Rome is in charge now, but obviously it's a shadow of what it used to be. So they're kind of looking back to the good old days when, in King David and Solomon, I would suspect, right? And then they're thinking that at some point those would repeat. And when you say the fourth, could you remind me again that when you said with the fourth kingdom, could you lay that out, the timeline on the kingdoms, just so I get that clear?
Yeah, here's the simple Daniel timeline. First kingdom, Babylon. Takes Jerusalem, exiles them. That's Nebuchadnezzar, golden head. Second, Medo-Persia. Cyrus lets them go home, builds a modest temple. Silver arms. Third, Greece. Alexander the Great sweeps in, Hellenistic culture, Maccabean revolt, Hanukkah. Belly of bronze. Fourth, Rome, the iron legs. Caesar Augustus is emperor when Jesus is born. That's the boot on their neck right now. Then the statue crumbles, stone cut without hands, God's kingdom. So by Jesus' day, they've clocked Babylon, done. Persia, done. Greece, done. Rome, current. We're at the end of the legs. Messiah should smash it any second. And they're standing in a scrappy little temple, remembering Solomon's gold walls and thinking, yeah, when he comes, we're getting that back, times 10. No wonder they missed the stable. They were expecting fireworks.
Yeah, so they're thinking, okay, we've got the prophecy. We're going through these powers, but the powers will rise and fall, and then we're looking for the last one to fall. And obviously, the assumption would then be, well, once it falls, it's because the Messiah came in and crushed it, and that's going to restore a new David or something like that, which is going to result in a new temple that'll be glorious and that kind of thing. Okay, so that's basically that would be the common theme, you would think. That's what you'd be hoping for, right? You'd be saying, okay, well, these corrupt empires have been what they are. We've endured that the whole time, but we would expect then, if they're going to fall, you would expect then they're going to be replaced by what we had, looking because they're always looking back to the good old days.
Yeah, exactly. They weren't waiting for a new thing, they were waiting for the best old thing back, upgraded. Daniel says the fourth kingdom crumbles, so they think Rome goes poof. Poof means David 2.0, not a carpenter, a crown, not a manger, a throne. And the temple, not some patched up hill shack. Ezekiel's vision, river flowing, leaves for healing, God's glory filling it forever. The prophets painted it so vivid. No more foreigners, no more taxes, no more tears. All that back plus. Because after all the empires, Babylon, Persia, Greece, they'd learned power without God fails. So when God wins, he keeps the memory. David's harp, Solomon's wisdom, but fixes the bugs. No more exile, no more idols. They weren't imagining progress, they were imagining restoration, with interest. Jesus shows up, no army, no scepter. They go, wrong door, pal. But yeah, that's the hope, not evolution. Reboot. Golden Age reloaded.
So how do Jews deal with that prophecy now then if they refuse Jesus as the Messiah?
They say the math's off. Daniel's timeline isn't calendar math. The weeks aren't literal years, they're epochs. Or the Messiah hasn't come yet. Rome fell, sure, but no temple, no peace, no David. So either the clock paused or the fourth kingdom isn't Rome. Maybe the whole mess until now is the iron mixed with clay. Some rabbis even say two messiahs, one for war, one for peace. One dies, one rules. Jesus could have been the first, but didn't bring peace. So wait for the second. Bottom line, they don't see fulfillment yet, so they read it as still coming, not already here. Keeps hope alive without closing the book.
It's kind of hard not to see Rome as a kingdom, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah, it's the obvious fit. Rome ticked every box, iron boots, total control, crushing Israel exactly when the prophecy said. But Jews say, wait, if Rome fell, where's the temple? Where's the ingathering? Where's the wolf lying with the lamb? No resurrection, no world peace, no proof. So either the kingdom wasn't Rome, or the Messiah didn't come yet, or God hit pause. It's not denial, it's evidence. If the show ended, why's the theater still dark? They see Rome as symptom, not finale. The real fall hasn't hit. So yeah, hard for us to miss, but for them, still watching the stage.
all right, all right. Well, let's continue line for line.
Verse 19. For as by one man's disobedience many were made sinners, so by the obedience of one shall many be made righteous. Verse 20. Moreover the law entered, that the offense might abound, but where sin abounded, grace did much more abound. Stopping.
Summary?
Adam disobeys. Boom, we're all sinners. One man flips the switch for many. Jesus obeys. Same deal. Many flip back to right. Then the law shows up, not to fix it, but to make sin louder, clearer. Can't miss how bad we are. But grace doesn't just match it, it drowns it. Goes way beyond, more powerful than the mess it cleans.
Okay, so he's saying now grace is kind of being added on top of the law over and above through the sacrifice, and grace kind of takes the law and makes it almost kind of ridiculous in comparison to the grace seems a little bit better deal, you know.
Yeah, like the law's a spotlight. Says, you're filthy, look. Makes sin look bigger than you thought, right? Because before law, you might think, I didn't kill anyone. Then law hits, don't covet, boom, you're guilty. It piles up. But grace isn't a mop, it's a flood. The law exposes the stain. Grace burns the whole house down and builds better. Not close, not comparable. The debt's insane. Grace is absurdly overpaid, like forgiving $1 trillion with a blank check. The law keeps score. Grace quits the game. Better deal? Yeah. It's not even fair. It's hilarious how good it is.
So that's obviously the argument of Paul saying there's kind of like a new covenant here since since sacrifice of Jesus, and that's not obviously that's again nothing in the Old Testament was going to be like, oh, the law's going to totally go away and it's going to be replaced with just complete grace, you know, and the forgiveness of all wrongdoing or a payment of it by God Himself incarnate, right? That's pretty not exactly the what was.
Yeah, total shock to the system. The Old Testament had sacrifice, sure, but yearly lambs, not once and for all, and never God dying. Prophets said God would forgive, like Jeremiah, I will forgive their iniquity, remember no more, but always pictured through temple, through Israel, through time. Paul says, no, God's not sending a sign, He's becoming the payment. That's not in the scrolls, not like that. So the law doesn't vanish, but it stops being the boss. It diagnoses, grace cures. And you're right. No one woke up thinking God'll take the hit. They thought Messiah will smash Rome, rebuild temple, end sin. Paul says he did end sin by getting smashed. Radical rewrite. But it fits the heartbeat. God always pays. Not with coins, with himself. That's not replacement. It's revelation. The covenant upgrades from wait for help to helps here, in flesh. Jews hated it. Gentiles ate it up. No wonder Rome burned the book. Too good, too crazy, too true.
So he kind of came up with it, but he kind of is the one that came up with he put it in the context of grace, right? Because we didn't really have exactly the same kind of concept of grace, right?
Not even close. The word grace, charis in Greek, Paul uses it like a bomb. In Jewish world, you had hesed, loving kindness, covenant loyalty, but that's earned loyalty, sort of. Abraham walked, God blessed. Do right, get right. Paul says no. Grace is gift, no strings, no buildup. Like a billionaire handing you his estate because you blinked. The rabbis would have said, wait, that's dangerous. People will abuse it. And they were right. But Paul says, exactly, because you can't abuse what you didn't buy. He didn't invent the idea. Jesus lived it, dying for strangers. But Paul weaponized it. Put it in letters, spread it. No one before said, God dies, sin dies, law bows, you're free. That's Paul's genius. He saw the cross wasn't just a Jewish Messiah dying. It was God's whole economy flipping. Not kindness, overkill. And yeah, we didn't have that word. Grace as total, unearned, impossible love. Until him. He named what Jesus did. Everyone else just stared.
So obviously, again, the Gospels themselves is Jesus's preaching and whatnot. But again, the narrative arc is, of course, kind of aligned to saying, from a Jewish perspective, that he's the Messiah, right? And so he's living out the concept of grace as through his deeds and whatnot, but he's not really preaching. He's not preaching in the vocabulary of grace. It's Paul that's basically encapsulating that into the vocabulary we know.
Yeah, he doesn't use grace like Paul does. Jesus says forgiveness, mercy, kingdoms come, your faith's made you whole. But it's action, not doctrine. He heals on Sabbath, grace in motion. Eats with sinners, grace on a plate. Doesn't say, by my grace you're saved. He says, your sins are forgiven, go. Same thing, different lens. Gospels are story. Watch what God looks like. Paul is commentary. Explain why it looks like that. Jesus lives grace. Paul names it. Jews heard Messiah heals. Gentiles heard God forgives. Paul translated, that's grace, all of it. Without him, we'd have miracles, but no manual. He'd the one who said, this wasn't random. This was the plan. And the plan's better than you thought.
All right, let's continue line for line.
Verse 21, that as sin hath reigned unto death, even so might grace reign through righteousness unto eternal life by Jesus Christ our Lord. End of chapter 5.
Summary.
Paul closes. Sin ran the kingdom, killing everything it touched. Grace flips the throne, takes over, rules forever, through perfect righteousness, delivering life that never ends. Jesus isn't a temporary fix. He's the new regime.
All right, let's continue.
Romans 6, verse 1. What shall we say then? Shall we continue in sin, that grace may abound? Verse 2. God forbid. How shall we, that are dead to sin, live any longer therein? Stopping.
Summary.
Paul shuts down the dumb question. If grace grows with sin, why not keep sinning? No way, ridiculous. If you're already dead to sin, why live like you're still its slave? Grace frees you, it doesn't give you permission to wallow.
So obviously this is going to be the rebuttal to this, and basically saying, well, from an economic standpoint, right? If you're gonna give someone ultimate grace, they're gonna be a glutton, is what's gonna happen. And Paul's argument is no, because it's not people don't actually naturally desire gluttony. They desire grace. They desire God. So if they're properly aligned, that's not the result isn't just sipping cocktails on the beach.
Yeah, like, if grace is infinite credit, why not max it out? That's the lazy economics. But Paul says no, because once you're dead to sin, the bill doesn't tempt you. You don't want cocktails, you want Him. Sin's only fun when you think it's your only currency. Give someone real wealth, they stop robbing banks. The glutton's heart didn't flip, it just found better food. Grace isn't permission to binge, it's the end of hunger. People don't crave chains, they crave freedom. And when grace lands, chains look stupid, not scary, stupid. So why keep them on?
Yeah, because usually theft happens more when there's actually not when you actually don't own anything. I'm thinking economically, right? When you don't own anything, right? When you don't have property, then everything you start thinking, I'll just do what I can get away with. But if you own if you own it, right? If you take ownership of the thing, then you act responsibly, right? I mean, if the grace is yours, if it's given to you, you feel confident in it, then you're not trying to get away with something. You're content with what you have. Maybe, I don't know if that's a good way to say it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it. Theft is desperation, not desire. When you're starving, you steal bread. But if someone just hands you the bakery, you don't break in. You open it at dawn. Grace isn't a loan you dodge. It's the deed to your own life. Once it's yours, you stop scavenging. Not because you're scared of cops, because you like running the shop. Sin's the scavenger mentality. Grab now, pay later. Grace says, pay later is paid, now build something. Ownership changes everything. You don't trash what you own. You polish it. Or at least you stop burning it down for insurance money. Contentment? Yeah, because the fear's gone. Not fake happy, real full.
You said since the scavenger mentality. Where did you pull that from somewhere, or did you kind of just riff that?
Riffed it, but it fits. Paul's whole vibe in this chapter is, you're not a thief anymore, you're the owner. No verse says scavenger, but look at how he talks. Dead to sin, don't let it reign in your body. That's not language of fear, it's language of possession. Your members are instruments. Whose? Yours now, not sin's. I just said it the way that makes sense to you, not scripture. Just, yeah, true.
Yeah, so that's, I mean, basically the sin is it's going to be, if you're released of the sin, then you're released what we might think of as just bad habits typically, right? Or like bad urges that are pulling you in one direction or another.
Yeah, like sin isn't just murder and theft. Most days, it's the stuff that's killing you slowly. Scrolling because you're bored, eating because you're mad, numbing because you're lonely. Urges that feel normal but leave you empty. Grace doesn't zap them overnight. It's more like, now you're not owned. They whisper. You can say no. Not because you're strong, because you're not yours anymore. Bad habits are sin's leftovers, not chains, just crumbs. Brush them off, walk.
All right, let's continue line for line.
Verse 3. Know ye not that so many of us as were baptized into Jesus Christ were baptized into his death? Verse 4. Therefore we are buried with him by baptism into death, that like as Christ was raised up from the dead by the glory of the Father, even so we also should walk in newness of life. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul's saying baptism isn't just a dunk, it's a funeral. You died with Jesus, buried the old you, and if he rose, so do you. Not just someday, start now. New life. Not better habits, new nature. The water's a marker. Old you's gone. Live like it.
All right, let's continue line for line.
Verse 5. For if we have been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Verse 6. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul, if you died like him, you'll rise like him. Guaranteed. Your old self, addictions, pride, fear, nailed to that cross. The body of sin isn't your flesh. It's the machine that ran you. Now it's smashed. You're not a slave. You walk free.
So so this is clearly going to give us, obviously you're going to end up with the idea of trying to mirror the Jesus as the perfect, example, but that also kind of leads to this suffering martyrdom kind of thing, which could be good in its proper place, but also you could see how it could be seen maybe just taken incorrectly.
Yeah, it's the knife's edge. Paul means follow Jesus' path, not as pain for pain's sake. But people read crucified with him and think, oh, I need to suffer too. Flagellate myself. Marry misery. That's backward. The crucifixion killed the old you, the part that liked sin, liked control. It's not hurt yourself to be holy. It's the hurt already happened. Now live risen. Martyrdom? Fine, if it comes. But seeking it? That's ego, not faith. Jesus didn't want pain. He wanted obedience. And obedience led to pain because humans suck. Don't copy the nails. Copy the yes. The world will hate anyway, but not because you're dramatic, because you're free. Keep that straight, or grace turns into guilt.
All right, let's continue line for line.
Verse 7. For he that is dead is freed from sin. Verse 8. Now if we be dead with Christ, we believe that we shall also live with him. Stopping.
Summary.
If you're dead, like really dead, you're done owing sin anything. And since we died with Christ, we know the sequel. We'll rise with him. Not someday spiritual, right now, practically. The power's gone. The grave didn't hold him. It won't hold you.
Okay. Let's continue line for line.
Verse 9. Knowing that Christ being raised from the dead dieth no more. Death hath no more dominion over him. Verse 10. For in that he died unto sin once. But in that he liveth unto God. Stopping.
Summary.
Christ died to sin. Once. And that was it. Now he lives forever, for God alone. Death can't boss him around anymore. So we're in the same boat. Sin's claim on us is over. One death, eternal life. No reboot needed.
Okay, so this is another kind of thing. Obviously, Jesus played that out, but Paul's really kind of taking it like another step here in interpretation. It seems like he's saying what it means.
Yeah, he's translating action into life. Jesus lived it, died, rose, never touched sin again. Paul says, that's not just history, that's your biography now. Jesus didn't just beat death, he broke its lease. So you don't have to keep signing the contract. Once is enough. Not symbolic, actual. You're in the resurrection, starting now. Faith isn't, I hope someday. It's, I'm done dying today. That's the step, from what he did to what you are.
So I think the interpretation is basically he's died for the sins, and you as consequences are kind of like part of the resurrected as sinless to some degree, right? So because he paid basically the price, right? So then, okay.
Exactly. Jesus paid the full freight, not just your sins, but death's dominion over them. So when he rises, you're not left behind. You're in him. Sin's power ended. Like a criminal whose sentence was served by someone else, you're free. Not perfect, still trip, still fail, but sin can't own you. The hook's broken. The resurrection isn't a future ticket. It's your new address. Live from there. That's what Paul's driving at. Not magic, just finished.
So the thing that you would think, like time wise, like the logical question would be, well, that might have been great. Like Jesus died, a couple months ago, and I've done some bad thing. I've been a human since then, and I'm obviously I've built up some more sin, and so but the general idea is that no, he died for sin in perpetuity if you're basically in the right mindset, basically, and which again, of course, the Catholics then put a whole doctrinal kind of idea about of confession and this and that to make sure your mindset's in the right spot. But it's not like, oh well, wait a sec, God's got to come back here and do it again because I've been messing up for like some time now, and
Yeah, he doesn't re-sacrifice. One time, forever. That's Hebrews 10, no repeating. The point isn't, I haven't sinned since Easter. The point is, your mindset isn't, I've got to stay perfect to keep the ticket valid. It's, I'm already validated. Now I'm done letting sin drive. You will mess up. Grace doesn't erase will, just the debt. Confession? Helpful, not magical. Keeps you honest. Doesn't reload the cross. If he had to die again every time you snapped at your brother, he'd be nailed nonstop. Nah, it's finished. Your sins, past, future, paid. The question isn't, am I still guilty? It's, why keep acting like I am? That's the freedom, not license. Just done paying.
And of course, the confession is another one of those things that the Protestants kind of recoil against because it seems to give authority to to a certain group of people, which seems a little bit risky. Although it'd be great if you were like in a group or something, and that was like, and you just confess to each other like the disciples. But again, it's like when you make it like a something that has to happen, and then you institutionalize it in such a large degree, and then there's power in that. That's when it gets scary. It's not exactly a sacrament from a Protestant perspective, because you just basically have baptism, right?
Yeah, it's the power thing. Protestants hear confession and think, wait, so I need a man in a collar to say, you're okay? That's not grace, that's middle management. James says, confess to one another, equal eyes, no thrones. Disciples washed each other's feet, not filed forms. But yeah, when Rome scales it, booths, keys, absolution, suddenly it's a toll booth. Not wrong in small doses. A pastor, a friend, hey, I hate myself for that. Pray. Beautiful. But when it's required for grace, or priest only, it starts smelling like control. And Protestants recoil because Paul's letter says grace is direct, no middleman. Baptism seals it once. Confession? Hygiene, not highway. Keep it mutual, or it's just another job. And jobs breed kings.
All right, let's continue line for line.
Verse 11. Likewise reckon ye also yourselves to be dead indeed unto sin, but alive unto God through Jesus Christ our Lord. Verse 12. Let not sin therefore reign in your mortal body, that ye should obey it in the lusts thereof. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul says, treat yourself as already dead to sin, like count it done. You're not trying not to sin, you're living from the resurrection. So don't let sin run your body anymore. Don't obey the old urges. It's not be good. It's remember who you are.
Okay, let's continue line for line.
Verse 13. Neither yield ye your members as instruments of unrighteousness unto sin, but yield yourselves unto God, as those that are alive from the dead, and your members as instruments of righteousness unto God. Verse 14. For sin shall not have dominion over you, for ye are not under the law, but under grace. Stopping.
Summary.
Paul, stop handing your body over to sin like it's your boss. Don't let it use your hands, your mouth, your mind for trash. Instead, give all of it back to God, like you're already resurrected, and let him use you for good. Why? Because sin can't own you. You're not under the law's scoreboard anymore. You're under grace. No more guilt tax, just freedom.
Let's continue line for line.
Verse 15. What then? Shall we sin because we are not under the law, but under grace? God forbid. Verse 16. Know ye not that to whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, his servants ye are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death, or of obedience unto righteousness.
Summary.
Stop it. Paul says, just because law's gone, don't flip and sin freely. If you're under grace, you can't use that as an excuse. You're either slave to sin and death, or slave to God and righteousness. It's not do what you want, it's whose side are you on. You still choose. Grace doesn't cancel consequences, it changes allegiance.
Okay, so then from a Jewish perspective, they would probably be saying, well, it's the law that stops you from doing the sin because that's going to be the thing that because it is the consequence, right? And he's trying to say that there's still consequences even though you under the grace item, but basically it's whether you choose allegiance to grace or not, right? So in other words, you can accept grace or you can choose not to accept grace.
Yeah, that's the tension exactly. The Jew says, the law's the fence. Without it, you'll run into the street. Paul says, no, the fence was never enough. You just kicked it down anyway. Now the street's yours, but you're not free to crash. You're free to drive. The consequence isn't the law slapping you, it's wrecking your own life. So allegiance? Yeah. Grace is given, but you live like it's true or you don't. You can accept it and still act like a slave, Paul's warning, or accept it and act like an owner. Not forced, offered. The law kept score, grace changes the game, but you still play. Choice stays, just not based on fear, based on love, or lack of it.
So you're saying, but basically that gets interpreted in later traditions of Christianity of have I accepted grace or not, right? That's what it comes down to, right? So the Catholics start to put in these dogmas to say if your soul's in a state of mortal sin or not, to see if you've chosen to accept grace or not, right? So you can be in various levels and you have kind of more rules, more structure involved in it. And then the Protestants, of course, Luther wanted to break off on that and say, well, I'm just going to cling to the word and say, well, it's by grace alone. That's all I got. He says I can accept grace. I'm gonna believe him, right? And then I'm just gonna accept it, and I'm just gonna be okay with that. And his problem, of course, was, well, how do you know you're gonna accept grace at death, right? Up until when you die, and he'd be like, well, there's no guarantee, I guess, if I'm out of grace at some point in the future. I can't guarantee that. I'm just going to cling to the Bible and whatnot. And then the Calvinists dealt with that problem by saying, well, no, that's not how it's going to be. When you accept grace, there's going to be this conversion experience, and you'll never go back if it's a true acceptance of grace, because now you have grace, and why would you ever go back if you actually know the grace of God? And so you get this whole, it seems to me that kind of scares me because it incentivizes a little bit like almost like a shit, like you need to prove something, which, for certain communities, which kind of scares. So I kind of like Luther's thing on it personally, but does that sound about right? And what do you think?
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. And yeah, it's messy because grace isn't a stamp you collect. It's a relationship you keep choosing. Catholics built the levels, mortal, venial, to keep you honest, so you don't think grace means I can cheat. Makes sense. If sin's real, track it. But then it turns into scorekeeping, which Paul hated. Luther snaps, no, grace alone, faith alone. Believe and cling. Don't audit yourself. But that left him terrified. What if tomorrow I don't believe? What if grace slips? He woke up yelling at the devil because his own heart felt like enemy territory. Calvin fixes it with perseverance of the saints. Once you're in, God keeps you in. No backsliding for real believers. But then, yeah, you get proof tests. Were you saved? Let's see your life. And suddenly faith looks like performance art. Tongues, tears, no booze. Scary, because it turns trust into theater. Me, I think Paul's closer to Luther than Calvin. Not because Luther was comfy. He wasn't. But because Paul keeps saying, reckon yourselves dead. Not, feel yourselves dead. You live the story whether the feelings show up or not. Grace isn't a mood ring. It's a fact. Catholics add safety rails. Good, if they don't turn into walls. Calvin adds certainty. Good, if it doesn't turn into arrogance. Luther adds raw faith. Best, if you don't let fear eat it. But all miss the point sometimes. It's not, did I accept it? It's, do I accept it now? Every breath, no audit, just yes. And if you screw up, yes again. That's freedom. No proof, no levels, no guarantee except God's word. The scary part? You can't fake it forever, but you don't have to. Just keep saying yes. The heart follows, or it doesn't. Either way, he's still there.
And see, that almost sounds like, I think that's right, but it almost sounds like, and I think we lose that in Christianity because what you said there almost sounds like Eastern religions, like Buddhism to some degree, where it's like we keep on thinking in a time frame like, well, what about the future? What if I mess up then? Or what about the past, that I messed out in the past and I have to do this, that, or the other thing and whatnot? Obviously the answer is, well, you don't know. I have no control over the future. I have no control over the past. I only have control over right now. So all I can do is just keep practicing being in here and now as full as I can, saying yes or doing what I think I need to be doing here. And well, what if you don't do it in the future? Well, then, I'm going to, I don't have any control. How could I prep to not do something in the future? Well, all I can do is practice doing it here, so that maybe when I'm in that moment, I'm more likely to have good habits by then, right? That's all you can do. You might as well just, you know.
Exactly. You're right. It's very now. Paul's not talking timelines, he's talking posture. Reckon yourselves dead, that's present tense, not hope you'll be someday. And yeah, it's eerily Buddhist. No past, no future. Just this breath, this choice. The difference? Buddhism wants you to wake up and end the loop. Paul wants you to wake up and run into someone. Not emptiness, fullness. But the practice? Same. Stay present. Don't hoard tomorrow. Don't flog yesterday. Just yes, now. And if tomorrow sucks, tomorrow you'll say yes again. That's grace. Not a reward for perfect streaks, just daily oxygen. You build habits? Sure. But not for insurance, for taste. You like the air, you stay. Christianity lost that when it got doctrinaire. Like, are you saved? Instead of, are you breathing? But yeah, if you're worried about the future, you're missing the point. Grace isn't earned by prediction. It's received by participation. One yes at a time. Might as well. Like you said, it's all you've got.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's kind of like the Christian thing. I think had more of that, like I don't know about Judaism as much. I know there's a spiritual Judaism sect as well. It's kind of, but the Christians had, the monks are going out and meditating all the time, and acting seems pretty close to like Buddhist kind of things, right? They're just praying. You got the rosary beads and whatnot, and you're basically contemplating. You're living a life of contemplation and prayer. That was like their whole job for some, even though they didn't do it as well sometimes, but that was kind of like, which seems kind of like a Buddhist, closer to the Buddhist. And then the I think I don't know much about, I'm not an expert on Buddhism or anything. I'm just saying that if I would think that on the Buddhist side of things that they do have some, they're doing the similar thing, but they also, like when they say that you're going to come out of the loop, right? Meaning you're going to stop the reincarnation cycle and remove yourself. If you were to try to put the two things together, you would say, well, if they remove themselves from the reincarnation cycle, becoming enlightened, then you would think they don't just disappear. You would think they would be moving up. You would think from a Christian perspective, they would be moving up vertically instead of laterally, continuation, right? So it's not really Christian where we have the reincarnation thing, but you would think that they're trying to break out of the idea that everything is cyclical, right? It's actually, there is a vertical motion. It's just that it takes multiple lifetimes under that concept until you can go vertically towards what we would think of what God, right? I mean,
Yeah, Christian monks and Buddhist monks are closer than people think. Silence, breath, repetition, rosary or mala beads, same rhythm. Contemplation isn't just thinking about God, it's emptying so he fills. Buddhists empty to see nothing's real. Christians empty to see he's real. Same posture, opposite punchline. Buddhism says the cycle, samsara, is pain. Keep coming back till you wake up and step off. No ladder, no heaven, just cessation. Nirvana isn't up, it's gone. No self left to go anywhere. You're not climbing, you're dissolving. That's the vertical they mean, not toward God, but out of illusion. Reincarnation isn't progress, it's repeat until you quit. Christianity? No loops. One life, one death, one judgment. But the now practice, Paul's reckoning, Jesus' kingdom is at hand, feels the same. Be here. The monks got that right, not to earn heaven, but to taste it now. So yeah, you're onto something. If you mash them, the Buddhist breaks cycles, but sideways, into nothing. The Christian breaks cycles, but upward, into God. One ends the self, one gives it away. Both hate stagnation. Both say, stop spinning, just stand. One says, see the void. The other, see the person. Same road, different destination.
So the end goal is for the Buddhist ideal is basically to see everything as illusion, that we're all one, or we're all the same thing or something like that, and then you think to stop the cycle because the cycle is pain. From, I think that's more of a Hindu thing, right? The cycle is, everything is pain. I guess Buddha's on that too, and so you're going to stop the cycle, even though that actually means that you're dissolving into entropy, into nothingness, and that's how you stop the cycle of pain. I mean, I would think that you would be becoming more real in some ways, what although different than anything you're perceiving would be, or I would think it'd be more like, well, you're becoming part of the one, or part of the entity, or part of, I would think, creation of entity, or going towards, what do you think?
Yeah, Buddhism's endgame is tricky because it's counterintuitive. Not everything is one. That's more Hindu Advaita, non-dual, Brahman everything. Buddha said the self is illusion. Clinging to me is the pain engine. The cycle isn't pain in general. It's rebirth driven by craving. Stop craving, stop rebirth. Nirvana isn't dissolve into entropy. It's not even nothingness. It's no-thingness. The closest word, peace. Not becoming part of God, not merging, just off. Like a fire going out, no fuel left, so no flame, no smoke. Still warm, still there, but not grasping. Christians hear nothing and freak. Like, why aim for void? But it's not void like black hole. It's void like silence after screaming. Relief. You're not becoming more real. You see, you've never been a thing to lose. So yeah, it feels like downward entropy to us. To them, it's freedom from the loop. No up, no down, just stop. Christianity flips. Become more real by giving away the fake self. Same dissolve, different direction. One into nothing, one into someone. Both say, let go. One ends the ride, the other
So
hops in
when
the
we
driver's
say
seat.
we're not a thing to lose, I mean, to me, that almost sounds like we're not perceiving that we're all made of energy in essence, right? Which would be, so you can kind of see it that way. So you break the, I guess, illusion of materialism, which means everything is more spiritual than you would think. But that doesn't mean it's like nothingness. It's just not, it's spiritual. It's not actually material in the way that we think of it.
Yeah, exactly. Buddhism doesn't deny energy, it denies permanence. What you call energy isn't yours, it's flowing, changing, not a solid thing. So when they say no self, they're not saying you're nothing. They're saying you're not a box. The illusion is thinking you're a separate, lasting object. Like a wave claiming, I'm the ocean's boss. You're water. Always were. That's not nothingness. It's everything. Materialism says stuff is real. Buddhism says stuff's real, but empty. Borrowed, not owned. Spirituality, sure, but not like a ghost in the machine. More like the machine's a dream. You wake up, and the dream doesn't vanish. You see it's made of sky. Not less real, just less solid. Christianity meets it halfway. Yes, your energy, God's breath. But he keeps calling it you, not illusion. Gift. Same insight. World's not solid. Different tone. Not empty, full of him.
So it still seems like it's semantics somehow that Are you something or are you nothing? Are you energy or are you not energy? You're kind of like a you can almost think of it like a computer program now because you have the Planck constant could be the smallest pixel unit of space or whatever, and then but anyway, whatever. Let's stop it here. Where tell me where we are so we can pick it up next time.
We're at Romans 6:14. For sin shall not have dominion over you. For ye are not under the law, but under grace. Next time, verse 15.